as we prepare for Hurricane Laura, let's take a moment to learn a little bit about hurricanes and why they're so impactful. This is hurricane season. The waters are warm in the tropics right now. Whenever you go out into Galveston Island to the beach around February, March, April, May, even at the beginning of June, the water is kind of cool, or at least cold for Galveston standards, because we're used to kind of warm bath waters. Whenever the water starts to warm up a little bit, especially in August, September, October, November, this is our typical hurricane season. So hurricanes drive energy and gain energy from warmer waters. And how a hurricane is formed is whenever around the equator, the water can get to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Whenever it does this, the water molecules start to evaporate, go into the atmosphere, and once they reach the atmosphere, they start to cool down and start to form clouds. When enough clouds are being formed and enough energy is happening, combined with winds that are coming from off the coast of Africa, it starts to form these tropical storms, tropical depressions, even as strong as hurricanes. Now, hurricanes are just really strong storms, and what they do is they start to gather this cyclone of energy. They start to make this swirling ball of energy, of clouds and of storm clouds, bringing with it rain and very strong winds. So in the center of the hurricane, you have the eye, right? You have the eye of the hurricane, and it typically takes a spiral. So kind of interesting, at the equator and north of the equator in the northern hemisphere, we have storms that will spin counterclockwise. So I'm going to do this backwards because it's going to flip. So counterclockwise would be this direction, right? And on the southern hemisphere, on the southern half of below the equator, all the storms are going to go clockwise. So these storms are starting to feel a spin, to make a spin and spin around, right? And so that's where we start to get a lot of that energy. Remember, it's still building up as it's going over water. All these warmer waters will cause more and more water to evaporate, give it more energy to the storm, and it can get up into these strong winds, strong rain, strong effects of it. Now, the eye of the hurricane is very calm. So imagine you're in a swimming pool, and you're going round and round in the swimming pool, making this whirlpool, right? Whenever you're making this whirlpool, if you notice, you can do this experiment at home. All the things in a bathtub or something like that, all the floaties, anything floating on the surface is going to go to the center because it's calmer there. So it's going to slowly go to the center. Hurricanes, that center is very calm in the center. The most intense spot of the hurricane is going to be at the eye wall, so surrounding that eye wall. So you have your eye wall in the center, you have all of the clouds, all of this pressure system swirling around it as well. And whenever it hits, it can have devastating effects. Flash floods, high winds, things like that. So it's very important to be careful whenever we're talking about hurricanes or tropical storms, tropical depressions, because they can have a large impact. Now, Galveston Island is the first one to get impact. Being a barrier island on the Texas coast, we are the first ones to have the storm reach us, right? So there are some natural things on the island that help prevent the impacts of storms. Galveston, like I said, is a barrier island, which is basically a glorified sandbar. What has happened is over time, sand and sediment has gathered into basically a strip along the coast, and with that, plants have gathered there, started to fortify the island. Oysters will come on the back and fortify the island, so there's enough sediment. And over time, people have started to settle there and live there and build up. Now, there are some man-made tools that Galveston has gotten to deal with storms, and one of them is the Galveston Island seawall. So whenever they created that, they raised the elevation of the island and also created this concrete seawall that can help reduce the effects of storm. So it's not just something for you guys to bike or rollerblade or run along. It's actually really important to the island when it comes to dealing with these tropical storms. Now, some natural things that the island has to help it is sand dunes. So sand dunes are very important to the island. They're, they break down they reduce the winds. Those strong 100-mile-an-hour winds can be reduced by these sand dunes, so the things behind it won't be as affected as much. And what happens, and what allows those sand dunes to form, is plants. So next time you see a plant, you should say thank you, because they're able to hold on to the sediments in the ground and be able to reduce erosion and weathering from the winds and the waves that are coming from these tropical storms. So they're holding on. Some of them almost look like vines going alongside the sediments, holding them in. And we also have some pretty large plants that will also be growing on those sand dunes. Now, we also have on the back side of the island more plants that are helping. In the marsh side, the back side of the island, we have lots of smooth cordgrass and other grasses that will hold in that silty sediment, as well as allow for reduction of storm surge. So storm surge is another thing. Basically, it's pushing in a lot of water from the coast, and it can help, and it can flood the island. So storm surge is actually kind of dangerous whenever we're talking about hurricanes, because you don't want your home to be flooded or anything like that. So combined with different tide levels, having storm surge push on can flood some homes on the island. So having those plants on the backside of the island helping to reduce some of that storm surge is really important. Some things underwater that are helpful are oysters. Now, oysters have really thick shells. They create these reefs alongside, mostly on the backside of the island, that are holding in sediment and helping to reduce the impact of some of those waves. So oysters are also very important to the island. So combined with our grasses and our oysters and our sand dunes and the seawall, hopefully Galveston will be able to weather this storm and ride it out pretty well. So I hope you guys are all going to a safe place, because you never want to play with storms like this. You want to make sure you're overly cautious to make sure your family is safe. But knowing that these storms are getting more and more energy from the warmer waters, it'll be an interesting hurricane season. But I thank you guys so much for learning with me today, and hopefully you guys are bunkered up safe and sound from this storm. See you later!